Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the latest episode of What's the Point? This is all about exploring the joy of purpose, where we have discussions with mission-driven entrepreneurs to find out what gives them their boost, their drive. My name is Andrew Miller from Business Enjoyment, and for me, it's all about being successful, but enjoying the journey at the same time. And a big part of that is purpose, and that's one of the drivers behind that. I'm just gonna, whilst we're on here, I'm just gonna have a little glance at my other screen and make sure that the live is working. I've had problems in the past where the live has not come through, and I'm just trying to look for it now. So bear with me whilst I do that, because I'd rather get this working. The fact that I can't see it is a bit worrying. So let's have a look on that, but we shall see. It's not showing up at the moment, but anyway, well, while we're doing that, what I will do is I might just nip over every now and again while we crack on, but to make things sure. But what I would like you to do is this: if you do get a chance, then have a look at my TEDx talk, which titled More Than Just Money, which runs through how society's got things wrong at the end of the day, and how we can find a better way of enjoying what we do at the end of the day. And so do take a look at that when you get the chance. Anyway, let's move on to our main guest for this evening. His name's Robbie Swale. In the intro, I called him on the notes. I called him a anti-procrastination coach. That was my words, not his. I'll let him explain what he actually does, but it gave a good flavour as to where we are. And but basically, what we want to know is what is the point of Robbie Swale? So, Robbie, welcome. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andrew, and nice to connect in this way. And yeah, I'm getting the sun slightly shining on me in Battersea, which is very lovely. And I love also that we're like, are we on? Right, that's a great kind of question. Is it working to be?
And I'm still not sure on that front. Well, it will be recorded and it will be attached for later on anyway. But I might just, if I fiddle things off screen, I'm not ignoring you. I'm hearing you all times.
Yeah,
we're trying to play the
tech. I love it. Yeah, I had a quick look on LinkedIn. To me, I couldn't see that we were live either, just so that.
Yeah,
you know that because I was like, I'm interested in how these things work. But sorry, I think you probably asked me a question, which I
I was about to actually, but let's go to you anyway. So, so just people to get to know a bit about you and where you're coming from. So let's start off, Robbie. I'll bring you up. What is your mission? What is it you're out to do?
Yeah, it's taken me. I feel like I've had a shift around that in the last year or so. Really, I think for a long time. I struggled with that question, and I struggled with all the talk about being mission-driven and purpose-driven. Part of that was because really why I was doing the things I was doing was a kind of sense that, like a sense of unfulfilled potential really in me. So a lot of my work on my work, where my business, where my coaching, where my writing came from was like, how do I make the biggest contribution I can? So the mission was something like that, and it was, how do I use my strengths? Like, what does that look like? How do I use the bits of me that weren't being used in my previous careers? All that kind of thing. And then something shifted like last year, really. And we're kind of two parts of it, I guess. Like, I got asked some really good purpose questions by Robert Holden. Have you come across Robert Holden?
But no, not.
Yeah. So,
or do I? What another coach down in London is that?
So Robert is like an author. He's like a bit more famous in America, I think, than in the UK. He's published by Hay House, so he's written a bunch of books. In the UK, he kind of became famous, I think, because the BBC or Channel 4 he had like a happiness group program on the NHS, and Channel 4 or the BBC made a documentary about him in the early 90s, I think, about that program. But he was on Oprah, which is partly how he became bigger in America, and he's published by Hay House.
Always helps, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Yeah, being on Oprah, exactly. And apparently she she was like, he was supposed to do one little segment, and the producers kept coming to usher him off, and Oprah was like, I'm talking to Dr. Holden, leave him here, which is, isn't that great? Yeah, this is like I want that to happen to me as well as happening to Robert. What I kind of, and his latest book actually is called Higher Purpose. I hadn't really thought about that. I think it's coming out. If it's not out now, it's coming out next week or something like that. But he asked some great questions, which helped me connect. I think I'd always tried to do purpose and mission from rational, and his question helped me to connect from to a deeper place, and that's partly what his work really does for me. And what came out when he asked this great question, which was, what is the shared purpose of humanity? And from nowhere for me came these words, which I will say to you now, to create the kingdom of heaven on earth. And I'm not religious particularly, and I hadn't thought about that phrasing before. But my reflection afterwards was to think about something as bold and big as the shared purpose of humanity at this moment in its history. You need some like religious or poetic or mythical language, basically, because it's such a hard thing to rationally think about. And then the other questions were about, I'm not going to quite remember, like something like, what's the part that you might play in that? And what's your soul gift that you might use to do that? Those are the other questions, something like that. And that's what made it more real for me, because a big part of the mission for me is now, which is where the anti-procrastination thing comes from, is about how do we, like, I, in my life, have had a bunch of stories like this, and I've seen clients with it the same. Sometimes there are things that we want to do, like we really deep down really want to do, and we aren't doing them, or we don't do them for a long time. And for me, the reason that connected to Robert's questions was like, that feels like hell to me. And if you can help somebody move from like, I really want to do this thing, but I'm just not doing it, to doing it, then inside somebody, that creates a real transformation closer to something like heaven and further away from something like hell. And so that's the work that I've been really focusing on this year. How do we help people, beat procrastination and finally do those things they've been really meaning to do? And that's because, like I said, that's been a part of my transformation and the work that I've done on myself over the last, 10 years.
So, I mean, what through that, briefly, why is that important to you? I mean, obviously it's a big part of who you are, but why has that come about as being your thing?
A bit by accident. So like by seeing what I'd been working on, and because it's really meaningful to me. So like one of the ways to track it, I think, to track like, what's the contribution I want to make? What part might I play in the place that humanity's at right now? Is, well, what am I good at? And what's meaningful to me? And it's really meaningful. Of all the bits of testimonial that I get, when someone says to me, I've been wanting to do this thing for a long time, and then I came across your work and I've finally done it. Like, that just feels like for me, or we did this coaching together and I've finally done it. That just to me feels like a kind of, like, I doubt things a lot. That's part of my way of being. I think a lot, and it feels like an undeniably good thing when people do that. And the things that people want to do for a long time, I haven't really found anyone being like, I just wanted to make money no matter what the cost to anything out there in the world, but I haven't been doing it for like 10 years and I don't know why. And then I came across your work and I've done it. The things that people want to do, they're like they pretty much all tilt the world towards the good and the true and the beautiful. And that's just a lovely thing to be a part of. It's all about creativity in the pure sense. It's like, I wanted to start this business that really helps in this way, or I wanted to start a mentoring program for young people in my company, or, it's like, there are all these kind of things. It's interesting. Maybe I will find somebody who's like, I've been really wanting to like take over the world and cause misery for everyone. I just been procrastinating on it for a long time, but I haven't found that person yet. It might just be the circles I move in.
But I think those people do exist, not necessarily in the procrastination, but I think those people do exist in terms of that side. But yeah, they're not going to be drawn to you, are they? So.
Maybe not. I mean, maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe it's as simple as that.
So for the people, paint a picture of the sort of a bit more about where those people are that you help. What's going on for them. So in other words, why this is important, what you're going to be talking about, why it's important to them.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the ways that one of the transformations that's happened for me is I've had to own that this is the work that I do. And one of the things that makes me procrastinate and stops me taking action is I ask what's the point of me? I ask like, well, why would I do this? And who will really be interested in this? And one of the things I think about, I think about a few things. I think about like the times this has been apparent in my life, and we all know someone as well who, like, every time we see them, they're talking about the business they're going to start, or like that, they're still talking about this thing that they've been talking about to us for years. I've got friends like that, and people I know. You're smiling, so you probably do. Most people watching or listening probably do. And it's like, it's for those people. And it's because I've seen it happen in my life where, I had a book idea and a business idea, and I basically procrastinated on them, and then I let people talk me out of them in different ways. And other people, like, it's amazing. The first time it happened, I was just gutted. The second time, I thought it was kind of magical. Both, like, I had a great book idea about a football computer game that I used to play, and then I had a business idea about kind of connecting as football again, actually. So it's like, tell the period of my life what I was doing. It's like really hard to find. It doesn't make such a difference anymore because we can all watch football on our phones. But it used to be really hard. If you were in a city that you didn't live in, or you just moved to a new city, it'd be really quite hard to find out where would be a good place for me to watch a football match. And I had those two ideas. I let people get talked out of them. I didn't do them. And then the book got written and published. And then someone years later said, do you know, I think for some reason, I never told them about that business idea about pub. Like, I think you might be interested in my friend, I've forgotten his name, Mitch. And it turned out that Mitch ran that football pub business. Like, and they were doing all right with it. Like, I don't think it had become huge because Sky had kind of solved that problem and things like that. But it was there. So for me, it matters because the person has this sense of what they want and they're not doing it. And there are two things that happen, two reasons that's important. One is the thing is probably important to them, but the other is the cost of not doing the thing. It's not neutral. So it's like the cost of not taking on action on what matters to us. It's not just that we don't take action. It's that the resentment and the sense that we could have, maybe should have for us or for other people, that builds up. So it's actually like things get worse if we don't take action. They don't stay the same.
So, because and as you said, there's two elements, and let's find out more about what you do. And there's the 12-minute method is what you talk about. But for me, there's two elements, because there's that, as you talk about deciding, is this the right thing to do, is one thing, and then there's actually doing it. So it feels like because even when you start doing something, it's not totally convincing. It feels right, but am I still right? So there's that, I suspect, holds a lot of people back. So where do you play with people in these sort of areas? How do you get people to know they're doing the right thing and then get them to do it?
Yeah, mostly, honestly, the work I do is in the second bit. Like, my feeling is mostly when you slow down with people, they actually know if it's the right thing. They actually know. And sometimes it isn't, and that's perfect. And we can carry stories that we should be doing a particular thing because that's what people are supposed to do. And sometimes there's a piece of work in that about what do you actually want? Or if you did this thing that you think you want to do, what would you get that's more important than that thing in itself? And so sometimes that's the piece, but mostly the work I'm doing, and you mentioned the 12-minute method, mostly the work that's in that is, for today, only start. Like, focus on that and let's find out as we go. Like, we can get really tied up on, is this the right thing or the wrong thing to do? And the best way to find that out is to do at least some of the thing. And then you'll know. Like, you won't know. Like, we never know until we've done the thing. We don't know if we're someone who can do it. We don't know if it's the right thing to do. But if we do the thing, or we do a small version of it, then that's a good way to find out and get a signal. But often the work that helps people do that is to kind of shift into that mindset a little bit more, I guess, which is something like what's the next experiment? How do we run a little experiment from where you'll find out a little bit more? And that was when I started a podcast, the 12-minute method podcast this year for various reasons, but I wanted to, part of it was to investigate the things in my life that I had wanted to do for a long time, not done for a while, and then finally done. Like, what happened for me in those journeys? And the first one was my career change, which led me into coaching. And the key insight in that was it feels overwhelming, and I need to break it into something that I can do and learn from. And if learning is the part of it that is, like, I can get behind, I can do a task personally. It's much easier for me to do a task if I know that learning is success from it. And so detaching from the theoretical outcome of, I need to change career because what the hell am I doing? If it's like, well, first of all, what I need to do is run some kind of experiment about if I think it's to do with people, which is what I thought, I'm going to need to run like a counseling experiment, a coaching experiment, an HR experiment. And it sounds more organized now than it actually was, because it was a total mess and felt very uncomfortable. But that was essentially the thing that got me moving.
Mm. And I think, yeah, there's those two parts of the getting stuff done. There's that, you alluded to, that attachment to the result, to the end outcome, and a lot of people don't start because they think it might fail. This might not be the right thing. And then you also allude to the journey element. Actually, well, if you're enjoying what you do and it feels right in itself, it kind of doesn't matter whether it's successful or not. And then you can get into the space of playing and seeing, well, what give you other results that you want from it, or whatever it might be.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how would you explain the 12-minute method? Bearing in mind we've got a short interview here, which is going to go out, and you don't want to give all your secrets away.
Well, I think like one of the strange things, I mostly like one of the first podcasts I was ever on a few years ago. My now good friend Neil McKinnon asked me the question. Started with, Robbie, why are you so generous? Because actually, I do give a lot of secrets away, and I don't mind doing that. I kind of trust. It's a practice of trust, really, for me, that if I do that, then the business will still work. And occasionally I've gone foul of that. I've given away the wrong things in the wrong way. And I know I've cost myself money, but I kind of trust I'm in this for the long game. This is a life project for me.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I trust that it'll work. But 12-minute method, briefly, is essentially that about 6 years ago, I was really anxious, much more anxious than I am now. I haven't always been this way, but at that point I was, about like really being present on the internet, like sharing anything online. And the work I was doing with my coach led us in the end to creating an experiment where I would write 5 articles in the next 2 weeks on my train journey across London. And I would write while the train was moving, stop when it stopped, proofread just once, and then post it on LinkedIn, because no one reads LinkedIn, I thought. Let's hope some people do watch things on LinkedIn, because otherwise we're just having a nice conversation.
Yeah.
And
it looks like it's not going live, but the recording will be posted on LinkedIn. It will be sent to everybody.
Perfect. I love the technology stuff. And this is a good example, isn't it? It's like, I've got much better. I would have been super stressed out about that if we were doing this 6 years ago. And I've got much better at like trusting.
Yeah.
Let's do the thing and see what happens. And there'll be loads of outcomes from this that are good, even if we never release the video. But yeah, so proofread once, post on LinkedIn was the practice. And it was stressful. But the key thing in those 2 weeks was all my fears didn't come true. So no one laughed at me. Like I didn't get many, there were some articles that didn't get any likes or comments, but like no one laughed. No one said, this is terrible. I was able to like get through my fear, partly because I put at the bottom of it, this was written on the train. So like, really at that point, like anyone who slags me off, just like, who cares? And I made it a weekly practice after that. And I've been doing that weekly practice now for 6 years. And at some point, at some point I stopped getting the train as much because my work was shifting. So I checked how long the train journey was, and it was 12 minutes that day. And this is funny to me now, because when I was first publishing my first 12-minute book, I checked how long the train journey is, and it's actually rarely 12 minutes. So it's just chance that it's 12 minutes, which is wonderful, because people who have taken the 12-minute method and used it often change the number. It's like 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour or whatever it is for them. The idea was, I'm just going to write in that time. I'm just going to, exactly like we're saying, just going to do the thing for these 12 minutes. And for me, the thing was right, but it was also, then it's going to get shared, because the practice, really what I was practicing was, I want to become someone who's comfortable sharing themselves with other people, particularly on the internet, but also more broadly. And I practiced that, and I've been practicing it all that time now. And then the reason the 12-minute method became a thing was that about 3 years into it, so about 3 years ago, I realized I had like 120 pieces on this blog, the 12-minute blog, just on LinkedIn at the time, and now on my website as well. And Seth Godin had just published a book of his blog, and I was like, I could put these out in a book. And I realized, like, for the few people, this is the story I would tell myself, maybe there were lots, that would like to read all of those blog posts. Like LinkedIn is a nightmare. It's hard for me to find my own blog posts on LinkedIn, let alone for other people. And it would be really hard for somebody to read all that blog. So I thought I could put it in a book. I could call it something funny, like I wrote this book in 12 minutes, which appeals to my sense of humor. And then I took that to a friend of mine who said, that's a great title, but does the book do that? And it turned out that because I'd been writing in that way, 12 minutes at a time, I'd just been writing about what I was interested in, trying to detach from the outcome, like not writing for like to get clients or to whatever, get a mailing list or whatever. And what I was interested in was all this stuff that we've been talking about in this conversation. I had basically for 3 years been writing a blog about that.
Mm.
And that meant that after 3 years, there were 130 pieces and 80,000 words. That's what 12 minutes a week for 3 years got me, 80,000 words. And then in the end, once that had moved on, it became a series because that's a bit easier because for the people who want the starting bit of that, they can get by just the start book. People who want help with other stuff in the creative process, they can buy the other books in the series. And somebody coined the phrase 12-minute method at that point, who I'm very grateful to. It wasn't my idea. And that's where it comes from. And that's the kind of potted history.
Right. So is the 80,000 words, so you said, was there like one book with all of that and then alternatives which broke it down into different?
So yeah, originally it was going to be one 80,000 word book, and then got some good advice that's quite a lot. Actually, it's quite a big book in the kind of genres that I move in. But also, yeah, I sat down and thought about, okay, if this was a book to help people finally do these things that they've been meaning to do for a long time, what are the phases of that? What are the stages of doing that anyone, pretty much anyone who wants to do their best work by making something, whether that's a book or a business or some other creative project happen, what are the stages they have to go through? And yeah, it turned out that those 80,000 words fell pretty neatly, give or take 4 or 5 posts into those 4 stages. That was going to be 4 parts of one really long book, and then it's ended up going to be 4 shorter books. So start. So if you want to make something happen, you have to start it. Everything that happened has started at one point. You have to not quit. You have to keep going. You have to share it at some point if you want to make a real difference to people, because if you just make the work, that'll make a difference to you. But if you want to make a bigger difference than that, you have to share it with somebody. And even if only one person is impacted by that, that's doubling the number of people, and that's the mental trick that I often play on myself to get stuff shared. And then the tricky 4th one, which is part of the 3rd book in the series, is if you're doing all those other things, you probably then want to think, if you're someone like me, about what do you need to do your best work? Like, how do you create the conditions to do great work? Now, the reason that's the tricky 4th one, even though it's the 3rd book in the series, is I think a lot of projects are kind of wrecked on the rocks of speech marks creating the conditions for great work, when it's really just a way of procrastinating. So like, I'll start my book once I've got my idea perfectly, or I'll start my business once I've got enough time, or once my home office is set up, or once I've really thought through this business plan. And all of that, in theory, could be creating the conditions for great work. But most people would be better off just starting. And the most important conditions for great work are that you start the thing, you keep it going, and at some point you tell someone about it. So do those things first, and then worry about the conditions for great work. And I say that as someone who's got a book called How to Create the Conditions for Great Work. So it's a funny thing to be really aware of.
The conditions for great work is doing the work. There
right. Most important one. Yeah, definitely. Do something.
Yeah, that's a good phrase. Just do it. Someone should do that.
Yeah, exactly. but that's a good, that's a funny thing that you should bring that up, because again, it might be Seth Godin, but it might be somebody else. I like Seth Godin's work a lot, but I don't want to give him too much credit if this wasn't him. But I heard someone say about just do it. I'd always taken that as a slightly aggressive slogan. Just get on with it, Robbie. Just do it. What's wrong with you? And somebody, I think it was Godin, pointed out it could be just has 2 ways of being used in English, like that one that I just did, and only. So it could be only do it for now. And that's a much more that's basically what we're talking about. Only do the thing. Don't worry about everything else. Only do. And that's a bit Yoda, but also a really different feel to that slogan.
Yeah, and it's that clarity of focus. It's like the decluttering of the brain. What's the one that does the decluttering? That's the word name. But you're doing that with the brain. So instead of worrying all this stuff that's going on, it's just minimalism. It's just I need to think about one thing. That's okay. I can do that. And just bringing it down to one focal point. And it's
is it Marie Kondo? Is that who you're thinking
Yeah,
of? Yeah, like I think there's a bit even in one of the books about that, which of course came out because I just come across her work about how I try and deal with, exactly that thing. And her two questions are, does it bring you joy?
yeah,
And if not, like, let it go with gratitude. And that's an amazing thing to mentally do as well. You can do it physically with the stuff in your house, but it's like, does this thought, does this idea, does this way of being bring me joy? If not, thank it and let it go. And it's not that you'll never have that thought or that mindset again, but it's like, it's a great practice for in the moment, at least for me, for kind of releasing some of these stories that I carry around.
Yeah. Beautiful. So the so it's start.
Yeah.
It's don't quit.
Yeah.
It's what was the third one again?
Well, it kind of depends what in the series. The third one is create the conditions for great work, and then share it at some point.
Share, of course. Yes, so don't keep it a secret for sure. Just on that don't quit point, if you've detached from the outcome, does that mean you're doing it forever? Or is there shaping some sort of place to go to so that you know when it's don't quit until it's done type thing?
Yeah, good question. It's funny, I'm talking tomorrow to my friend Sarah Wheeler. I think it's Weiler, and she has part of her work is about a thing called the quitting quadrant. So I'm really looking forward. So we're going to have a good conversation, I think, about don't give up unless the quitting quadrant says now's probably the time to give up. I'm simplifying the quitting quadrant a bit. Like, people should check that out, though. It's cool. So I think there's there's probably a lot to say in that, Andrew. Like, part of I had a conversation on my podcast for coaches, the Coach's Journey, with a woman called Jennifer Garvey Berger. Amazing woman, one of my really inspired me. And this is not her thing, but she said says it really nicely in her most recent book, and we talked about it a bit on the show. It's like, it's one of the real tensions of humanity, is that kind of tension that you're talking about. I think there, in her version, it was something like, I am enough, and I have an intuition and instinct to grow. And I think there's a version of that in what you say. It's like, you have to detach from the outcome, but also you have to hold that it's okay to have some kind of outcome. And if there wasn't some kind of outcome that you want, you wouldn't want to do this thing. But for me, the thing that made a massive difference is basically like the way I would guide somebody through setting up a 12-minute practice for themselves now would be to think not about what they want to have in, say, 3 or 5 years' time, but who would they like to be in 3 or 5 years' time? What does a person who's that thing you want to be do on a regular basis? And then how can you make that into a practice that you can do in 10 or 12 or 20 or 60 minutes? And in a way, that's where I started from, right? I started from, I want to be someone who can share my work without feeling as anxious and wound up and thinking about it as much as this. What does that person do? Well, they share their work regularly. How can I do that in 12 minutes? Well, write, proofread once. It's not actually 12 minutes to write, proofread once, put on LinkedIn, post is probably like 30 minutes. Yeah. But it's like, there's the weekly thing that I can do, and then see what happens. And then there's got to be, so I didn't say after that, I'll do it forever. I said, I'll do it till Christmas, after I'd done the first 5. And then until Christmas, it was obvious that something was up. Well, it was obvious something was up after 5. It was even more obvious after a few months. And then it was like, now I'm going to keep it going. But it was only when I started publishing the Keeping Going book and thinking about that I saw the impact of that on me. It's like the tortoise and hare is one part of it. It's like, well, if I could have written for 2 hours every day, I'd have written more than 80,000 words in 3 years, but I would have never done that. Yeah. Whereas 12 minutes a week was something that I could keep going for a long time. And the benefit of that versus, again, rushing and then failing was massive. But also like, once I know the thing about myself now that I didn't know before, which is I could set myself a habit and I can keep it going for 6 years. And if I know that, and I also believe, as I do, that most talent is just practice. So mostly the things we think are talent are actually just someone who's practiced things a lot. Therefore, practicing is really important. If I can keep any practice, basically, this is what I believe about myself now, because I've done the thing. If I can keep a practice going for 6 years, I could probably do that with any practice if I put my mind to it. And that means I could kind of like, what is possible for me feels completely different having had that insight. And so it's like, there's something worthwhile about choosing a thing although you might want to think about it in different ways, there's something worthwhile about choosing one thing and deciding you're not going to quit it for, let's say, 6 years, because it'll teach you things about yourself that you didn't expect it to teach you.
And that future projection of that insight of, if there's something I want to do and I'm prepared to commit to it, then I can have it. Changes the thought process into very much just a choice of, okay, here's these alternative versions of me.
Right. Here's these alternative things I could practice,
and which one do I want to be? And it's just a choice then, isn't it? It's, well, okay, once you've done it and it can be done, then you, as you say, you can create whatever version of you want to be and say, well, all I need to do is this. And it's not all I need to do, we know that, but it's breaking it in the head, in the subconscious. It's just keep doing this, just being consistent, small steps, constant, and you can then trust in the process, can't you?
Exactly. And one of the things I haven't really talked about, but one of the pieces I do sometimes with one-on-one clients is in a first session of an engagement, we'll do this thing we're talking about, I think, which is a far view, which is held kind of lightly enough and phrased in a way that doesn't attach us too much to an outcome, except the outcome that matters, and then a near-term practice. And the far view piece that I use, again, like most of my things, it's borrowed off somebody that I heard on our podcast, a guy called David Treleaven, and then made my own over years of working with people, is the question, and this is big for people, but it's a really good question to ask yourself. What would make you sad at the end of your life? So it's like, people think that is morbid sometimes when they first hear it. It's like, well, less morbid than rocking up at the end of your life and not having thought about it until that point. That is a feeling or thought I do not want to have. And then the reason
on that, I mean, because the normal question is what does a positive outlook, what does happy look like, and all the rest of it. But we're really good at thinking of negative things, so it taps into that black hat de Bono stuff, where it's like, I can do that.
Yeah, exactly. Free reign to do that on yourself. Exactly. But the reframe which is really the thing that I learned from Treleaven, was what it then becomes, these things that will make you sad, is a set of commitments to live into. And the phrasing is beautiful. It's, I am a commitment to. And that really takes this potential future regret really into the present. Which is like, so I don't want to, what's one of mine? So mine really, we had our first child 2 years ago. And when I first did this exercise after that, the answers were really different, because suddenly there was a whole set of them about her. And one of them is like, I don't want to be missing. I would be sad if I'd been missing at the key moments in her life. Not all moments, like I'm going to miss a load of her life. I know that. But at the times when she really needs or wants me, or I would love to see. So it's now like, I would be sad about that. So I am a commitment to being there for the key moments in Leah's life. And it's like, I feel a bit, of course I feel that as I'm saying it, partly because she's going to be starting a new nursery next week. And it's like, I'm going to be able to be there. I'm going to be there for the dropping off. And I now know for sure I am, like, because I've just remembered it, but it's like, I'm going to be there for the settling in. I'm going to be there for the dropping off. It's like, I can do that. And that's a way of taking that thing of the long term into the present and making it a practice then in a real way. Reading those once a week would be a really good practice for, like making sure I become that person.
Yeah. Good. I like that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all that. What's for you yourself? What's going on right now? What's new and exciting? What's coming up for you? Is there anything that you're particularly stoked about?
Well, so the reason she's changing nurseries is we're moving house.
Oh,
so like
okay.
everything like in my mind really at the moment when I'm not having a conversation, and even when you ask me that question, even now, is about the house move. So we're moving from Southwest London, where we've been for since like 2014, and my wife's been in this area for even longer, to Worcestershire to be near her family, but also to have more space and to get the lifestyle that we want to create. And so that's what's going on and exciting in a life sense. And it's hard when that kind of thing's happening. Like it's literally happening. If anyone's watching the video, you can kind of see the empty wall behind me. This is because everything is now in Worcestershire in the new house, but I'm in London. That's why also this probably is echoing a bit more than it would have otherwise, because there's very little in this room.
I thought you just going minimal. I think, you've been reading stuff.
Yeah, if you find old videos of me from like 5 years ago, I used to sit here a lot to do calls, and you'll see this wall behind me, but it'll have stuff on it. And anything, if we were speaking next week, it would be from a not quite put together office in a very nice house near Stratford-upon-Avon and Evesham. So look out for that. Anyone who wants to follow my work, but so that's one of the things that's going on. And then to kind of answer it in a bit more the way that I know I could or should, or people normally would. The fourth book, the fourth 12-minute method book, is nearly done now. So the share book will be out in about 6 weeks. And I've been learning from publishing each one. I've had to get over myself and publish in the way, like publishing books about this stuff is really funny, because every time you find yourself procrastinating and getting overwhelmed, you know where to go and what to do. And it was really funny when I decided to split the books into 4. I was super stressed about it. I was like, is this the right thing to do? Is it the wrong thing? My brother didn't reference the 12-minute method when I was telling him about it, but he did say, well, you'll kind of be able to like do the first one and then learn from that and then do the second one. I was like, oh, that's the whole point, isn't it? I should have really thought about that myself. So the fourth one is coming before Christmas, and that's exciting. And then this chapter, which has been intense over the last year because I had them already, and it's been a year of publishing, will be done, and there'll be some new things that will emerge after that, but I don't know what they are yet.
And neither do you need to know. It's all that general progression.
That's what I need to learn. That's the lesson I need to learn from this whole conversation, Andrew, really, isn't it? Like, and from all this work, the whole 12-minute method piece of work.
Yeah. So if I
well, I've lost your audio, Andrew. I don't know if the recording will have, but I can see myself.
All right.
Oh, there you're back. Yeah.
I shrunk myself to hang on, that's something around here.
Love it.
Around, I don't know. I'm going to hide you for a moment and just see what happens. But yeah, so this is your website address on there. Hopefully, there we go. There's a button in there somewhere. So yes, www.robbieswale.com. That's your website address. Is there what's on that website there?
All the stuff, really. Lots of now we're into like 260 12-minute articles, links to the books, links to the podcasts. Although my website has been built in this manner because I'm aware that building a website can become procrastination. So it started with the minimal possible website that I could make about 7 years ago, and it's evolved, and that means it's a bit unwieldy. So people are on it. Do dig around to find what you want, but there's loads to read, bits about coaching, bits about the work I do for coaches and leaders as well, as the creativity stuff that we've mostly talked about today.
Well, that's brilliant. Well, if anybody interested to find out more, then go to that link, and I'll make sure that it should have appeared on the stream, but I'll make sure it goes in with the notes as well when I send out the replay. As I say, looks like some of the live stuff didn't work. Certainly not on LinkedIn, but I think it might have gone on YouTube and Facebook. I mean, who knows? I haven't got a clue. We do this stuff, and then
I love it.
We find another way of sharing it, don't we? So it's all
that's
good.
Part of it. That's part of it. It's the whole. It's in a way, it's good, Andrew, isn't it? For the topic of this conversation, it's good that we have just made this thing, and we don't really know how we'll use it, and we don't know if anyone's watching, because that's what it's like to do a creative thing. Is you just try and make it and see what happens.
They were watching because they're sending messages saying, "I can't get on."
Oh, poor people. So sorry.
We'll sort them out. They'll get to see it. Don't worry. Any final points you just want to sort of leave people with as we move away, or you?
No, I mean, I think we've hit it. Like, one of them is just start the thing, and if you can find a way to like that. Again, like I said, some of the most meaningful comments I have from people are, I had a really nice message from a guy called Phil Stern, who does some great work in the UK with people on CVs and interview prep and things. And he said, I started reading your book, Robbie, but I didn't finish it because I had to go off and finish my website, which I've been procrastinating on for a long time. And I love that stuff. I had a similar one from a woman who was on a book group that we presented, who read How to Start When You're Stuck, which is the first one, said a similar thing. It's like, I just kept wanting to get up, and a woman called Jo from Australia is like, I just kept wanting to get up and do the things. And I sent this message to a Facebook group and all that kind of thing. So just start the thing is the message. I hope people take this from me. And if you want to let me know, I love connecting to people. So find me on LinkedIn or Facebook, or mostly LinkedIn is where I'm active, because that's where the 12-minute blog was or is. So add me and let me know, especially if you've started something.
And I do hope that on the covers of your books, or the new one at least, you have that quote of I read the How Not to Procrastinate, never actually finished the book. You know,
I shouldn't know. That's such a good idea. I'm going to put that on my web. I'm going to get Phil to give me permission. I'm going to put it on my website. That's a really good idea.
Absolutely, that's brilliant. Robbie, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you very much. As I say, anybody have a look at his website, have a look at him on LinkedIn, and just whatever you need to get stuff done. I will send you into the ether for a moment, but I will catch up with you soon. But thank you so much for coming on, Robbie.
Yeah, thank you.
So yes, thank you for everybody. Apologies for the technical issues. I'll make sure we get the link out to you, so you'll be able to watch this. But yes, thank you very there'll be another one coming up next week. So watch out for future interviews as we go through that. But other than that, thank you so much. Thank you for coming along. And my name is Andrew Miller, and I want you to enjoy your business so much it makes your bits tingle. Thank you.